Hey, everybody. It's time once again for another one of my priceless presentations. This time on Chapter 19 in Sociology on families. Well, let's see. I have a quote here from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. He said, "Marriage is the beginning and the pinnacle of all culture. It makes the savage gentle. Marriage may sometimes be an uncomfortable state, as it should be. Are we not married to our conscience?" Noble words there, Johann, noble words. Well, the definition of the family has certainly changed over time. I remember back when I took sociology in college, the family definition was kind of like describing the family form. It was mom, dad, two kids named Buddy and Sissy, and a dog and a white picket fence. And things have certainly changed because here's the new definition that's in your text. And notice how sentimental this is. A social institution found in all societies that unites people in cooperative groups to care for one another, including any children. Kind of gets to you, doesn't it? Where's the love, man? Well, anyway, in 1950, that's 50, 90% of all households fit the US Census Bureau definition of a family. Now only 68% do. So, as the meaning of family has broadened, we're seeing a shift from family form to family function. In other words, more people, including sociologists, seem to be saying, hey, if it works like a family, it is a family. So, if it's mom and mom or dad and dad or a single parent, it's a family. It's cool. Now, having said that, that's how liberals accept it. That's not how conservatives accept it. And you will see that conservatives are still trying to preserve the traditional family form of a heterosexual couple with kid or kids. Well, let's see here. Statistically speaking, the typical oh, by the way, I'm sorry, on page, nope, got that wrong. Figure 19-1, that I got right. I just don't have the page correct. Shows family form in the United States. Statistically speaking, the typical US family is a married couple, both of whom are high school grads and are in the labor force, with one child. That's the mean. Not, it doesn't mean it's a mean child, it's the statistical mean. Or no children, which is the mode, meaning that's what happens most typically. Mean is the one right in the middle. So mean is one child, no children is the mode. Living in a mortgaged home they and the bank own. At any given time, about 1 in 20 households includes a working man, homemaker woman, and one or more children, although again, about 25% take this form at some point. Okay, family and global perspective. These are sociological terms, just so that you're familiar with them. One is nuclear family. Now, that doesn't mean they live near a nuclear power plant or like The Simpsons, where Homer works in a power plant. Nuclear family is a social unit composed of one or more commonly two parents and children. This is the norm in industrial societies. And although it's changed in post-industrial societies like ours. The extended family is a social unit including parents, children, and other kin, which is common in pre-industrial societies or traditional societies. Sorry, I have to pet the cat here. Want to see the cat? Say hi to everybody. Now look at her eyes carefully. She's almost blind, but she's learned to live inside the house, and she's pretty cool. She knows where everything is. You had your fun to get out of here. Okay, so in the United States, an extended family is associated with kin and dependency, but in traditional societies, that's the whole point. You know, the extended family. The cat's biting my leg. The extended family, I just fed you. The extended family is it's the norm. It's expected. The idea is we all take care of each other. Now, here's where in comes the culture clash. So when families, newly arriving families, come here from another country, they will often live with their kin who are already are living here. And so we who are used to the family only being, okay, come here, the family only being mom and dad or the kids or whatever, we get all freaked out by this. Well, all these people living together under one roof. Hey, that's what your family did too when they immigrated here. Of course, you're going to live with family. You know, if you go back to when we were talking about welfare, we said, well, a lot of single moms have a difficult time working because how are they going to get their kids taken care of? If it wouldn't be for the extended family, they wouldn't be able to work in many cases. Okay. There are also residential patterns, neolocality, and now, these are kind of heterosexist terms, but sociology hasn't always caught up. Neolocality. Neolocality means you don't live near either married partner's family. Patrilocality, for want of a better word, you live near one partner's family, and matrilocality, you live near the other partner's family. I'm trying to bring this up to speed for the 21st century here. The comedian. Notice I always feel compelled to reference everything I say now with the comedian if I'm attempting to tell a joke. George Burns said, happiness is having a large, loving, caring, close knit family in another city. Okay. Now, one of the things I recommend, I know that some of you still didn't feel you did as well as you hoped you could do in the second exam. Yeah, I mentioned this on the introductory overview of the course that what I want you to do is there's no need to take notes. I hope you've seen by now that everything that's in the exam is straight out of the book, and I told you what page number it's all on. But here's what I think some of you may be missing is I said, please think along with me. You don't have to agree with me. Just follow the logic of what I'm saying. Try to understand the material through me. Don't just memorize what you need to know for the exam, because that's where you're running into problems. I think some of you are anyway. So try to understand the material. I'm trying to explain the material, so please try to understand it. Hopefully that'll help you on the third exam. Okay, so for the third exam on page 499, you need to know the structural functional analysis of the family. And you may recall in a previous lecture, and what are you supposed to do as soon as I start off with, you may recall, You may recall that it was my very first lecture, and I said, if you look at the major social institutions in society, what do the social institutions do? They try to take care of our common human needs. And one of the common human needs is that we have to figure out a way to socialize the kids, teach them what up. Don't get bit by your cat on the leg who's still hungry. We're about to have a confrontation here, Kitty, and it's not going to be pretty for you. Anyway, so I said, what is the primary function of the family? Socialize the kids, right? So functions of the family, right here it is, page 499. Number one, socialization, the primary function of the family. Two, regulation of sexual activity. This is the incest taboo, which is social, not biological, is universal but variable. Three, again, you know what that means. It means it's found in every culture, but what constitutes incest varies from culture to culture. Three, social placement. In other words, your family confers upon you your social identity in terms of ethnicity, class, perhaps religion. Now, sometimes some of us who are not born in the upper class got a little upset and perhaps a little envious and jealous about that. Robert Nisbet said, we do not protest the unequal advantage given by virtue of genetic transmission of qualities of strength and acuity. Why then should we protest the inheritance of cultural material qualities, which are part of what we think of as a family and ancestry? Why? Because we all want the money. That's why. And a fourth function of the family is to provide material and emotional security, at least ideally. We've seen how that's not always the case, and certainly isn't the case material, particularly these days as a result of the pandemic. The emotional security is critical. As I probably said before, among many other things I've said before, is that what is the most important thing that kids need? Love, Love. My experience in working in social work or practicing social work is that when you have a kid who's a troubled adolescent, the reason why is somewhere down the line the kid did not get the love he or she needed. Okay, well, the critique of the structural functional approach is that it overlooks how other social institutions like the government are providing for some of the same human needs as does the family. For example, daycare. Um, we rely on daycare so that we can work. So we have other people raising our kids for us. Going back to the early 1700s, before there were schools and mandatory education, who would educate the kids? The family did. Now we have education, public education doing that. A second criticism is it overlooks the diversity of family life in the United States. Three, it understates the problems and conflict and violence in family life, which leads us to, on page 500, the social conflict and feminist analysis of the family. The key point with the social conflict point of view is how the family perpetuates patterns of social inequality. Marx and Engels wrote in the Communist Manifesto, the bourgeois has torn away from the family its sentimental veil and has reduced the family to a mere money relation. Yeah, that's right. That's why I said marry for money. How does this happen? Through property and inheritance, through the intergenerational transfer of wealth, through the family, and notions of private property inheritance as being perfectly okay. So, in other words, you're wealthy, you pass your wealth on down to your kids, who in turn are wealthy. So, the intergenerational transfer of wealth. And on the flip side, middle class to middle class and low income to low income. So this creates our ascribed status in whatever, remember, ascribed, not achieved, ascribed status and whatever privileges or lack thereof that go along with that ascribed status. Two, patriarchy. The social conflict theorists say that the family perpetuates patriarchy and sexism. Three, race and ethnicity. Endogamous marriages, which effectively means like marries like, perpetuate unequal class relationships as well as racial and ethnic hierarchies. While the critique of the social conflict approach is while the family and social inequality are connected, the family does perform very crucial social functions, as said the structural functional folks. Symbolic interaction analysis you don't need to know for the exam, but I will tell you that marriage and the family life are perceived differently by each family member, and these perceptions change with time, as do the role performances of the family members. So for example, let's say you turn 18 and here you are 17, 18, here you are in college, and your parents are still treating you like a kid. And so, you come home and here at well, typically under you have 24-hour visiting privileges, but not anymore under the pandemic. But you have 24-hour visiting privileges, no curfew, whatever. And then you go home, your parents say, you have a curfew. You go, when you're in my house, young lady, you will abide by my rules. Okay, I get that. But then you go, well, then why are you sending me to college where you're going to have 24-hour curfew? So, or no curfew and 24-hour visiting privileges. Anyways, but here's the point. You just have to understand each other. See, your parents are having a difficult time transitioning from, we got to keep you safe. It's our responsibility to keep you safe, to, you know what? We got to just kind of transistor. Yeah, I am your parent, but I'm also your friend now, and I will only give advice if you ask for it. Difficult transition. Okay, well, the critique of the symbolic interaction approach is the family is not just the social creation of its members, it is also shaped by outside economic and cultural forces, and they evolve through stages linked to the life cycle, which is a standard critique of symbolic interaction. Symbolic interaction, of course, is we create our own reality, but on the other hand, what reality we create, knowingly or unknowingly, is already shaped by how we've created reality in the past that's created barriers or obstacles to do whatever we think we got to do. So we already have created a sexist, a heterosexist society, which we're trying to undo, but those barriers are already there because of how we've created society up until now and continue to recreate it. Anyway, as always, I refer you to the table that compares these. It's on page 502, which summarizes the theories. Again, look at the table. If you understand the three theories in comparison, great. If you don't, then go back and read more to make sure you do understand and that you're fluent with them so that you can answer that question. Well, this next section has nothing to do with the exam, but it has everything to do with life and my attempts to get a few more jokes in. So we're going to talk about stages of family life, but most importantly, I want to focus on courtship. And the reason why is because, once again, I'm the caring professor. I'm figuring maybe you don't know how to go about this process of trying to, meet another person that you might want as a marital partner. So I studied this process and I noticed that in the United States, the key is, first of all, you gotta find someone who has some potential. Now, this study, I've taught this course, I can't even remember how many hundreds of times, and I've taught marriage in the family, and I ask this same question every time I teach the course, and only once has a student come back with the exact same finding that this study did. Now, this was a study done by Lindsay and Merton at a co-ed college, and they examined what traits in a marriage partner are significant to college students. In other words, and they listed 22 traits. So the idea was, out of these 22 traits, what is the most significant trait to you in looking for a potential marital partner? Okay, go ahead and guess. I'll wait. Nah, not that. Mm-mm. Humorous, I wish. No, no, not that either. Money, nah. Smart, nah. Hot, nah. You know what it was? It was affection. Everybody goes, affection? Yeah, don't you want an affectionate partner? Come on, think about it. Number one trait was affection. Okay, now I picked a few out just because I thought they'd be mildly amusing. Where do you think men rank sexual attraction? 1 being the highest, 22 being the lowest. I know, you're going to say 1, but it was actually 8th. Where do you think women rank sexual attraction? 1 being the highest, 22 being the lowest. Where do you think women rank sexual attraction? 16th. That's right. So women aren't nearly as hung up on looks as are men, which means there's a lot of hope out there for all you guys who pretty much look like a dog. How do you know he was a dog? Well, when we went out to dinner, he ordered a can of dog food. How else did you know? Well, when we got out of the restaurant, a bird flew over and he pointed. Okay, where do you think men rank bill paying ability? Bill paying ability. 1 being the highest, 22 being the lowest. 12th. Where do you think women rank bill paying ability? 6th. So for women, bill paying ability was much more significant than how the heck a guy looks. And damn, I respect that. Bill paying ability has always been a significant factor in choosing to get married. Benjamin Franklin, remember him? Franklin stove, glasses, kite, founder, ambassador to France, the ladies' man. Poor, poor Franklin's all. Anyway, he said, he wrote in 1751, the number of marriages is greater in proportion to the ease and convenience of supporting a family. When families can be easily supported, more persons marry and early in life. Well, getting back to my assistance for you in this finding a partner process, it must be hard to find someone appropriate, or there won't be such a proliferation of dating services. Man, there's dating services like according to race, according to religion, like J-Date. It's pretty bad. I remember too there were dating service. Maybe there still are. I don't engage in, but there was a dating service that was geared to, you listen to this kind of music, you like industrial metal, I'll find you somebody else who likes industrial metal, and on and on and on. So next, you have to figure out how to get this person that you're interested in to be interested in you. And of course, this means you got to come up with a really unique, clever pickup line. That's correct. Something clever. Now, this is a fairly recent survey. I mean, like 50 years ago. This is done in the last 5 years, and I'm still shocked and amazed that these were the findings. But what do you think was the number one most often used pickup line? No. It wasn't one about the how much does a polar bear weigh? Enough to break the ice. No. It's not, no. It's, are you ready for this? It's, what's your sign? What's your sign? Now, you may recall in chapter 2, I mentioned that 99% of the American public knows their astrological sign. And so it must be significant to some people. Are you a water sign, fire sign? Because, we got to make sure we're, compatible here. Anyway, what's your sign? Now listen, personally, I think that's as lame as it gets. And if someone would ever use that kind of a line on me, I would need a snappy comeback, because the snappy comeback kind of says something about you, right? And so what would be a snappy comeback to what's your sign? Think of sign. I'll give you a few moments. What's your sign? Could it be, if you're not interested in the person, stop? Or if you are interested in the person, curves ahead? Or yield? Or, these are ones, I did not come up with these. I'm only repeating them for the sake of humor. But one was, students came up with men at work. Here's a showstopper, child on board. Yeah. And my all-time favorite response to what's your sign that students came up with in class was slippery when wet. Yep. Over the years, in teaching this course, students have felt compelled to then, when the class was over, email me different rude and crude pickup lines, most of which I'm not going to read here, especially because this is getting recorded, but I'll give you a few anyway. How about, can I buy you a drink, or you just want the money? See, here's a tip for you guys. Women are famous for milking guys for drinks at the bar. And then come 2 a.m. after you forked out a fistful of cash and you're expecting something big to happen at 2 a.m., they just go, later, dude, and march on out of your life. Now, here's the way to handle that is, okay, I'll buy the first round, but if you're really interested, you buy the next round. And if he refuses to do it, you head the hell out of there. Okay, Another pickup line. Are those real? You'll never find out. How about, my name is, remember that. You'll be screaming it later. Well, that's a real great pickup line. If you were the last woman and I was the last man on earth, I bet we could do it in public. Bet again. Oh. No, wait a minute. I got to find this one. Here's a really good pickup line. Hi, the voices in my head told me to come over and talk to you. Wow, I really want to talk to somebody who is getting voices in their head telling them what to do. Yeah, let's talk to you, crazy person. This should be a fun evening. How about this one? Do you remember the Flintstones? Okay, here's a little Flintstone pickup line. I'll be Fred and you be Wilma, and we'll make your bed rock. And the rest are censored. Okay, so, I don't mind sharing my foolproof line, pickup line, because I'm the fool who proved, is if I find someone I'm really interested in, female I'm really interested in, I haul out this one. Hey, what's an ugly woman like you doing in a nice place like this? Now, if she responds with, that's the most insulting thing I've heard all evening, I'm thinking, it's early yet. Who knows what else you're going to hear? But on the other hand, if she says, well, you're the wittiest son of a bitch that came in here tonight, I'm going, I think we could click, huh? See, I don't have time for this. I got to separate the wheat from the chaff. I'm tired of playing all this dating game crap. I want to know right off the bat if there's interest. If not, I'm moving on. Now, if she likes that pickup line, that's when the Living Leginator 5000 kicks into high gear. Okay, getting back to pickup lines. Guess what the second most often used pickup line is, don't I know you? Your response could be, not in the biblical sense. See, if you go back into Genesis, and this is in the section of Genesis where they go through the begats, right? If somebody knew somebody, it meant they were, intimate. Don't I know you? Not in the biblical sense. Of course, that presumes the person even heard of the Bible. And the third most often used pickup line was, come here often. That'd be a great line at a funeral. You'd stand there at the funeral. Hey, come here often? Yeah, every time he dies. Like, what? Okay, then presuming the pickup line worked, then the dating game begins with such concerns as, oh my God, shall we do it on the first night? If I don't, perhaps he or she will think I don't find him or her sufficiently attractive. If I do, maybe he or she will lose respect for me. All the while pressured by how much money was invested in the date up until now by the other party. Here's how guys have it figured. If they're putting out a big chunk of money for dinner that night, they're expecting a lot more than thank you for a wonderful evening when it's time to part company. On the other hand, if the guy sets you up for a deluxe dinner at McDonald's, he shouldn't really expect too much later. Now, this whole thing, I for you guys, I hate to let the cat out of the bag here, but men will tell women anything to have sex with them. I know it's shocking, but it's true. So if it's, you won't respect me in the morning, I don't respect you now. At least that would be honest. Tell me you love me. You love me. Well, moving on. Here's another line I use just to, after the pickup line, rocks her world. Of course, there'll be plenty more lines to come as the evening progresses. But my final line at the end of the evening it's a line I picked up from Groucho Marx, is, I've had a perfectly wonderful evening, although this wasn't it. Now, if she thinks that's hilarious too, Boy, are we clicking. Well, in the text, it's noted how romantic love grew in importance over the years as the basis for marriage. Philip Barry said, "Love, two minds without a single thought." It's so true, too. Did you ever notice when people are in love, it's like they took leave of their senses? I've seen it here at the college where I haven't seen a student in class for like 3 weeks, and I'm emailing, "Hey, where are you? What's going on? I see you on campus. Hey, 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 come here. You haven't been in class. What's the matter?" "Ah, I'm in love." "Yeah, I know. I know you're in love, but you got to come to class." "Ah, I'm in love." "Listen, you got to get yourself together. You can't just not be in love. You can't just be in love and not come to class. You'll flunk." "I'm in love." It reminds me of, do you remember Bambi? Oh, who can forget Bambi? Except if you haven't watched it. But do you remember Bambi? Bambi at one point is frolicking with the animals, and Bambi, like hearts are coming out of Bambi. He's acting funny. And the other animals are going, "Hey, what's up with Bambi?" I think that's how they talked. And they said, "He's Twitter paid it." Yeah, he's in love. Once again, Bambi's just going, walking over to the hunters with guns. "Hey, Bambi, dude, we're about to blow you away." "I don't care. I'm in love." Jose Ortega y Gasset said, "Since love is the most delicate and total act of a soul, it will reflect the state and nature of the soul. If the individual is not sensitive, how can his love be sentient? If he is not profound, how can his love be deep? As one is, so is his love." I don't know the source of this quote, but I like it. It's, "Love is not just looking at each other, it's looking in the same direction." Let's see. Figure 19-1 shows by country willingness to marry without romantic love. Well, but here's what happens: the fresh blush of romantic love in a new marriage or even in a new relationship often fades as social and economic reality sets in, or you get to know the person better. Anyway, what is okay? And here to show you, this is nothing new. This is an old French saying: "Love makes time pass, and time makes love pass." That's right. And so all of a sudden you realize, wow, I don't have that same rush anymore when I'm around him or her. Now what? And it reminds me of, "Bring back that love and feeling. Oh, that love and feeling. It's gone, gone, gone. Whoa." Yep. Now what? Well, see, I think it's because we don't really understand what it is to get into a relationship or why we even get into them. What do you think is the number one reason why people engage in long-term relationships? Want to play hangman? Starts with an N. Want to buy a vowel? Try E. There's two of them. Needy. Neediness. Neediness is the main reason why we enter into relationships. Not all of us, but most of the time, most of us. It's neediness. I need somebody. It, it reminds me of the Seinfeld episode when George decided he was really into this woman, and he says to the gang, he says, "I'm going to tell her I love her." And they're going, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Don't, no, 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 pump the brakes there, dude." Why? Because what if you say, "I love you"? What are you looking for in response? Well, of course, the prerequisite, "I love you too." Well, what if she doesn't come back with that? Nevertheless, he goes out and he tells her, "I love you." And she just says nothing. And there he is, just flapping in the breeze, right? So, okay, so you hook up in a relationship out of neediness. And so, "I love you. Tell me I'm lovable," right? So you're not even saying "I love you" because I love you as much as you need to hear "I love you too." Yeah. And so it's the worst reason to get into a relationship, and it's never going to last. What what we have to do, folks. It prevails upon all of us to do this is we have to learn to be self-loving. And I don't mean narcissistic, I mean positive self-regard. You love yourself. Yeah. And then you're not needy anymore. I often think about social media and Facebook and likes, and you have to get so many likes. Don't you think that's kind of a sign of neediness? Because it is. You don't need any likes if you're secure within yourself. Yeah. You don't need anybody to tell you you're lovable. You love yourself. It doesn't matter what people think. You hold yourself in positive regard. Again, not narcissistically, but in a very healthy way, right? Now, imagine you've achieved that level of self-love, and then you look for a partner who's achieved that level of self-love, and then at least you're not engaging in a relationship out of neediness, because it never works. It just doesn't work that way. Now, why else would we ever enter into a relationship? I always kind of, well, let me back up. Why? The only reason you want to enter into a relationship is because you believe through this relationship, you and the partner must believe that as well, that the two of you can grow together as people, individually as people. Now, that doesn't mean you are responsible for the other person's growth. The other person is responsible for his or her growth. You're responsible for your growth. So it's not your responsibility to help the other person grow, but your belief is that being together, the relationship can assist each of your individual growths. I always kind of chuckle at the traditional Christian weddings because they make it sound like, I don't know, a Vulcan body meld, like taking little pieces of soap and put it in one bar. So it's like, once there were two, and now there are one, and think about the wedding vow. It's stuff how can you possibly promise all that? And think about all the people who promised all that and got divorced. Apparently they couldn't promise all that. It's somewhat unrealistic to promise everything that's promised in those traditional wedding vows, in my opinion. Anyway, I remember when I got married the second time, thought I had been wiser by now. And so we didn't exchange vows, we exchanged statements of basically intent. And I remember getting done with making my statement, and a friend of mine came over later and said, psst, psst, hey, listen, he said, I got to tell you something. He said, you promised absolutely nothing. He said, no jury in the world could convict you of promising, of saying anything remotely like a promise that this is all going to work or anything. It started with, hey, in this veil of tears, who the hell knows what's going to happen? I'll give it a shot, but Okay, so a great book to read. It's a short read if this is encouraging to you. Is Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. He was another one of those mystics who were trying to tell us the way it is. Right? And in The Prophet, he says, drink not from the same glass, but drink from each other's glass. You are two pillars standing in the wind, not one pillar together, two pillars, two columns standing in the wind. Allow the wind to revolve, to blow around you. Yeah. So he's talking about the importance of maintaining your singularity in a relationship. Now, the time may come when you feel you're not growing anymore in the relationship. What are you going to do? Well, you try it because things change. What worked last year, because the world's dynamic, what worked last year may not work anymore. Okay, so now what? Well, then you try to make adjustments in the relationship. Or maybe you decide the two of you are going to go to therapy together. Now, the other partner may not even feel this because the other partner may feel that he or she is continuing to grow, but you don't. And so if you don't do something about it and you still feel that you can't grow in the relationship, because think about how many times you or friends of yours have been in a relationship and all of a sudden they're not themselves anymore. They become like different people. They become this person they think they have to be in order to maintain the relationship or what the other person's looking for, as opposed to just being oneself. And so that's never going to work. And if you don't leave the relationship, you're just going to end up sabotaging it anyway. And it's just it may get ugly, And so then people say, it was a failed relationship. Why was it a failed relationship? It was just an ended relationship. You couldn't take it any further. You took it as far as you could take it. The gifts were given to each other, and it's time to move on. You each did something for the other that took them further along in their path, but their path lies in a different direction than yours now. And so you have to walk your path. Thank you. It's been great. Thanks for all you did. And it's time to move on. You have to. It's the way it is, or you'll be horribly unhappy, and that's no way to live either. And so will the other person be unhappy if you're unhappy. So you gotta move on. It reminds me of Diane Keaton, who was in many movies with Woody Allen. Diane Keaton once said, for some people, they find that one person, and that's the person they're with the rest of their lives. And I know I have friends from high school or high school partners and lovers, and they're still together. She said, but for many of us, she said, I know it was true for me, she said, it's a series of relationships. And she said, looking back on them, she said, my only regret is I should have ended some of them sooner. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, Alexis de Tocqueville, remember Democracy in America, French historian, looking at America in the 1840s, 1850s. He said, our forefathers had conceived a strange opinion on the subject of marriage, as they had noticed that the small number of love matches in their time almost always turned out badly. They resolutely inferred that it was dangerous to listen to the dictates of the heart on the subject. Accident appeared to them a better guide than choice. So the point being, how have arranged marriages statistically fared compared to love matches? Maybe about as well. Yeah. Melanie Phillips said, marriage is not a statement of a public love affair, but a public institution for the nurture and socialization of children. Again, another sentimental take on a relationship. Here's another sentimental take on a relationship. Heather Trexler-Ramoff said, what does a woman do for herself and for her children by being fussy about her marital partners? If she focuses on male traits that are heritable, she sees to it that her kids start with a genetic edge. We aren't all created equal. She also makes it possible to pick males who will stick around and help raise the kids. A woman is not simply competing for quality sperm, she's competing for the man who goes with it. It's competition, eh? Marriage, ideal and real. Benjamin Franklin said, keep your eyes wide open before marriage and half shut afterwards. Oh, Benjamin. Well, the good news is that research indicates that couples with the most satisfying sexual relationships have the greatest overall satisfaction with their marriages. Woo! The bad news is that frequency of sexual activity declines over time. Boo. One study found that married couple had more sex than singles, leading Linda Waite to quip, in addition to having more sex, the married have more money. It hardly seems fair. Well, I have many books I rely upon that I refer to as my personal Bibles, and one is Woman's Day. This was a survey on Women's Day, and kind of interesting. So this was of marital couples, and 31% of marital couples, at least the person they interviewed in the relationship, 31% have sex less than once a month. 48% of men don't have sex more often because their spouse isn't interested. 33% of women said they don't have sex more often because they're tired or have a headache. And 25% describe marital sex as either tolerable or terrible. That's a fine relationship. Now this is what couples do too, and they get this all wrong. Couples start seeing, hey, the sex life isn't what it once was, So they decide they'll go down to Whip City. And It's a chain outfit. They get on to Whip City and get some sex toys and figure that'll spice up the relationship. Well, it does spice up the sex relationship maybe for a while, but after a while, it's not anymore. You go, well, what the heck? See, because what they're doing is they're treating the effect instead of the cause. The reason why the sex is going south is because the relationship is going south. The sexual relationship is a barometer of the relationship as a whole. And so when the sex is going south, that's your indicator. We need to start thinking about our relationship because things are not going too well. Okay, what else do I have from this survey? Secrets. 24% have kept an important secret from their spouse. See, that's also known as lying by omission. You know, he or she, it won't hurt her or him if he or she doesn't know about it. No, 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 no. If it's an important thing and you kept it from your spouse, it's just called lying by admission. See, if there's lying in a relationship, there can't be trust. Excuse me, if there's not honesty in a relationship, there can't be trust. And if there's not trust in a relationship, there can't be love. 63% would try to save their marriage if a spouse was unfaithful. 19% of men had sex outside of marriage, and 12% of women have. Once again, men, it's that testosterone. Love. 56% would definitely marry the same person again. 44% of women have thought about leaving their husbands, and 31% of men thought about leaving their wives. Again, men being a little needier, apparently. Also, 38% of women claim that they would not marry the same man again. Whoa. Here's a good one. Although 28% of women reported feeling like a lover, about 40% said they were more like a housekeeper, and 27% said they felt like his mother. Here's the deal, folks. I know it seems twisted, but all too commonly, women marry dad again and men marry mom. I know you're thinking, oh, that's sick. It's the patterns we repeat. You know, once again, I rest my case for going to therapy. See, here's how it works a lot of times with relationships. You're not happy with your relationships because they ended. You know, you wanted to last, but they didn't. They kept ending, not failed, ending. And so you decide, I better go to a therapist. Maybe it's something I'm doing incorrectly, right? And the therapist asks you lots of questions because the therapist is trying to help you figure it out for yourself. They'd love to tell you the answer because it's as plain as hell, but they don't want to tell you. They want you to figure it out. And so so they ask you questions like, now, how is number one different than number two, number three, number four, number five? And how are they the same, right? Now, the more critical question is, how are they the same? Because you probably didn't think about how they are the same, and therein lies the key. So you're thinking, well, with number one, it didn't work out because of this. Number two, it didn't work out because of this. No, wait a minute. There's a commonality perhaps in the people you are looking for, men or women. And the question of what did they all have in common begins to tell you what your pattern is. And it may or may not be healthy for you. Apparently it's not, or you wouldn't be splitting company all the time with these people. So sometimes you find out because you're insecure or you're this or you're that, and you're picking out somebody who repeats dad or mom or whatever, I don't know. But that's why you go to a therapist. That's why it's easily worth $100 an hour, particularly if you go to a social worker, because social workers provide more therapy than psychologists and psychiatrists combined. Thank you. Now back to our regular programming. Okay. Let's see, child rearing. Share of new mothers who returned to work before their baby was 1 year old. Okay, so, got to get back, got to work. In 1976, only 31% of women had to return to work before their child was even 1 year old. Now it's 60%. So it's hard. It's devastating to do. You know, you hate to have to part company with your kid every day so that you can go to work and not see him or her again for another, 10, 12 hours. Who knows, depending on your work schedule and travel and all that. It's heartbreaking, but it is the way it is. It's a really difficult thing for women because unfortunately women have disproportionately borne the share of raising the kids. And if you want a career too, which is awesome, it's hard to balance all this. The share of latchkey children. Now you remember latchkey children. I remember I talked about those wonderful 3 to 5 in the afternoon hours when I got out of school before the parents came home, like doctor and nurse time and all the other drinking and all the other crazy stuff I did. Um, anyway, the share of latchkey children rises with age, the number of hours the mother works, and parental income. Robert Benchley said in America there are two classes of travel: first class and with children. Oh, yeah. How have you ever been on a long flight next to a screaming kid? Yeah, little baby screaming. You're trying to get some, there, you better have some real good noise canceling headphones. Now, here's a little tip I came across, and you can do this too. One time I was in that situation next to the screaming brat, I was on the other side, little tykes in between us. Anyway, so the kid's wailing away, and I come up with this idea. I say to her, I said, "Oh my God, is that engine on fire?" Pointing to the wing, and she goes, "Oh," and she's looking at it. And just saying, went, nailed the kid. Boom, kid's out. She goes, "No, no, no, no. That must just be how the sun was hitting." I go, "Oh, thank God." So, oh, look at little Junior. He's asleep. Isn't that just so precious? Sylvia Hewlett said, "We think of ourselves as a nation that cherishes its children, but in fact, America treats its children like excess baggage. Our tax code offers greater incentives for breeding horses than for raising children. We slash school budgets, and only recently do we allow working parents the right to spend even a few weeks with their newborns. We spend 23% of the federal budget on the elderly. That's a little dated. It's more like 50% on the elderly, but less than 5% on children." That's true. I realized this early on that, hey, we spend more, we get better tax deductions for breeding horses. So that's why I named my kids Secretariat. The United States and the United Kingdom, England is part of it, rank at the bottom of 21 wealthy nations in child welfare. Think about it. 1 in 5 kids in the United States lives in poverty. How do we accept that? According to the National Center for Health Statistics, 10% of US births are unwanted. Another 25% are ill-timed. In other words, wanted, but not now. Okay. Well, much has been written about his and her marriage, particularly by Jesse Bernard, and Bernard states his marriage is better than her marriage. Kathleen Goff said, "Women are always, in some sense, the second sex." So, what are some of the transitions and problems we have in family life? And so, let's look at divorce on page 509. But first, a quote from my endless series of When Insults Had a Touch of Class. Lady Astor once remarked to Winston Churchill at a dinner party, "Winston, if you were my husband, I would poison your coffee." And Churchill responded, "Madam, if I were your husband, I'd drink it." Okay. A study by, we're getting on to divorce. A study by Booth and Dobbs found that men with relatively high levels of testosterone were 50% more likely to marry than men in the relatively low category. The high testosterone men who married were 43% more likely to divorce, 38% more likely to have extramarital sex, and 12% more likely to abuse their lives. Maybe your pickup line, if you're looking for a guy, should be, "Hey, what's your testosterone level?" Now, see, it's not our fault that men are always thinking about sex. It's the testosterone. And I know you go, yeah, Maynard. Get this. This is a true study. They had volunteers, female volunteers, who they, I don't know if it was a patch, they inject, I don't know, but they took into their bodies the same amount of testosterone that's typically present in a male just to see what would happen. And as soon as it was in their bodies, they began to say, "Get this out of me! I can't stop thinking about sex." Yeah, so it's the testosterone. It's not your fault, man. It's the testosterone. Okay, so on page 509, you need to know the 7 causes of divorce. Number 1, because maybe if you knew, you wouldn't get divorced. You'd be able to be on the alert for these kinds of things. Number 1, individualism is on the rise. It's not about we, it's just about me. See, and there's a difference between, you have to take care of yourself. Absolutely right. You come first, not at the cost of the other person, but it's like I said in relationships, you have to do what's best for you. Anyway, 2, but if you had the other person feel the same way, you could still have a wonderful relationship. 2, romantic love often subsides, but as I pointed out endlessly in this course, love of money never subsides. 3, women are now less economically dependent on men, which was a leading cause of not getting divorced in the past because the woman could not support herself economically if she did divorce. 4, today's marriages are often more stressful. It is much more difficult to maintain a marital relationship now than it was 70 years ago. There's far more economic pressures. Women weren't so predominantly working and raising kids at the same time, and their sig others also working. It's just very, very stressful. And perhaps even taking care of your parents at the same time. 5, raising children adds to the stress. Divorce is most common in early years with kids, which is a good thing. Not that they get divorced, but this is it's a big mistake people think about, well, we can't get divorced because what about the kids? Please let me channel Tammy Wynette in one of my favorite twangy country tunes. For the sake of the children, we dare do not part. No, for the sake of the children, you dare do part. See, the problem is it's a misunderstanding, and that's why this is factors listed in your text, is that when the kids get older, they can handle it better. Just the opposite. The older the kids are, the more difficult it is for them to handle parental divorce. So the younger the kids are resilient. They can adjust much more easily than can kids when they're older. So, and you don't think that in a dysfunctional relationship, the kids see what's going down, and what's that going to do to them when they try to have relationships? That stuff's happening in their heads again that they may not go to the psychiatrist, the social worker for. Let's see. 6, divorce is socially acceptable. Hey, back in the 1950s, if you got divorced, it was like how Hester got her A. That's right, a little literary reference for you there. You were just, scorned by other people. Now it's so acceptable. It's like, what? You've only been divorced 4 times? Come on, get with it, girl. Get rid of him and get back on the wagon, 7, legally a divorce is easier to get, as many states have now adopted no-fault divorces. It's not so problematic to even get a divorce legally. Okay, how long do you think first marriages last? In other words, median, the one that's in the middle. What is the median duration of first marriages? 5 years. That's it. That's why a lot of times when I give them my sage advice about, hey, if you're interested, how about marrying for money? And they go, that's sick. And I go, or they're engaged, and they're showing me the ring. Oh, yeah, man. And I always say, does he or she have money? No, but we're in love with him. Come back and see me in 5 years. Second marriages, well, I bet they last longer. They do. 6 years. Okay, that's it. Over 50% of people who divorce remarry within 4 years. Okay, that's not too bad. It's when you remarry within 1 year that's the problem. Okay, so here's how it works. Um, when you initially break up with somebody, there may be a little bit of animosity and perhaps a tad of jealousy still involved there, and possessiveness. And so, it could be that it's been a few weeks after the breakup, and your friends say, "Hey, by the way, I saw your sig other at the club the other night with another person." You're going, "Oh, yeah." And so what do? You go out and find the first person you come across. It could be the person standing out with a sign on the highway going, "We'll work for food," or whatever. "Hey, you, get in the car. Come with me." What for? "Just come with me. We're going to the club." So you can drag them in and say, "Hey, look, see, I got somebody too, huh? What about that, huh?" Not about That's called the rebound relationship, which rarely work out. Not saying they can't, they just rarely work out. You're on the rebound. So again, the sage advice is, why did you enter into that relationship? Are you still needy? So the best thing you can do, according to marital therapist, is chill out. Go live with somebody like your friend or whatever, or by yourself, and be okay with it. Get comfortable in your own skin. Be totally cool with it. You know how you'll know? You'll know when you're ready for another relationship, when you don't even want one anymore. You're perfectly happy being by yourself. Yeah. You don't want another partner. That's when the other partner may well appear in your life, because you're not needy anymore. Now you're ready. I remember marital therapist coming to my marriage and family class, and she recommended you wait at least 2 years. I mean, don't date. No long-term relationships for 2 years. Get comfortable in your own skin. Okay, page 511. You need to know about family violence, violence against women and children. More specifically, number one, women are more likely to be injured by a family member or raped by someone they know than by a stranger. Two, wives are no longer defined as property, or that domestic violence is a private family matter. Um, First of all, the property thing, if you go back to laws in states, even as recently as the 1950s, women were legally defined as the property of the man. Like your horse, your house, your car, the woman was simply property, which sort of it dehumanizes the person. So no wonder men think they could do whatever they want with them. It's just a piece of property. Or that domestic violence is a private family matter. I remember many of our social work students work in domestic abuse shelters, and originally here in Pennsylvania, you would see them predominate in metropolitan areas, but north of the Blue Mountain in the rural areas, you didn't see them. And when the first ones began to appear, I would talk to them as to why did it take so long, and they said because up here in the country, in the rural areas, women still believe that domestic violence is it's just part of being married. It's a normal part of family life. And it's like, oh yeah, yeah, he slapped me around and he was drunk, but he said he's not going to be drinking anymore, but he will. You know. Most communities have established shelters for abused spouses, and we also now have stalking laws and court protections. About three. Oh, okay. Here's another fun-filled fact. How often do you think a woman will return to the shelter before she will finally leave the relationship on average? Yeah, it's staggering. It's 5 to 8 times. So when you're a social worker in the shelter, you're pretty sure she's going back to him or her again. And, all you can do is plant the seeds, say, hey, we're here for you if you need us. But no, we're going to make this work. We're going to make this work. And finally, about 3 million cases of child abuse are reported each year, with 58% of the abusers being women. Now, not surprisingly, These women were typically abused themselves as they were growing up. And so we continue to repeat the patterns. The marital therapist I mentioned, who used to come into my class, marriage and family class, said, here's how profound it can be for some women. And actually, this would be true for some men too, because men are often in abusive relationships too. Not as commonly as women, but men do get abused by women as well. And she said, let's suppose there's 100 men in this room, she said, and you being abused growing up either psychologically and or physically by your father, parents, you will be totally attracted to the one of those, to the guy out of that 100. You'll feel a magnetic attraction to the person who's the abuser. And you think, well, okay, so it's a symbiotic relationship. She likes being abused, likes she wants to be abused, and he abuses. It's a symbiotic. Yeah, but it's not a healthy relationship. Yeah, there's no way it's a healthy relationship. It's an abusive relationship, meaning it's unhealthy. So that's again how profound the stuff is in our head that we don't even necessarily know is there. Once again, go see that social worker. Finally, the harm caused by domestic violence often causes victims their ability to trust, causes, compromises victims' ability to trust others in future relationships. So just like the kid who hasn't gotten love somewhere down the line is now emotionally disturbed and is in some residential center for kids, very difficult to trust another relationship. Difficult to trust the social worker. Oh, you'll just leave me too. When the new social worker comes in, or it's very difficult. Put them with foster parents. Takes a while for that trust to come back again because you get burned. And so how do you defend yourself? Don't trust anymore. Don't put it out there, you know? But that's what happens in relationships too. You get burned often enough, you may not be trusting in a relationship anymore. Some other facts. Abusers do not typically suffer from psychiatric disorders because of the abuse. The abused often do suffer emotional problems. While spouse abuse exists among all social classes, in general, there is a consistent decrease in violence as income levels go up. Why? Because money provides abortions, babysitters, psychological help, and other tension cushions. The higher the formal educational level, the less the abuse. Spouse abuse exists among all races and ethnic groups. The higher the frequency of unemployment, the higher the frequency of abuse. This refers to what's known as the misery index, and with every 1% rise in unemployment, they see all the negative things that begin to appear: more crime, more domestic abuse. I think I mentioned somewhere prior to this in this course that one of the offshoots of the pandemic has been an increase in domestic abuse and more and more people seeking help to get a divorce, along with more arrests for drug activity. I thought this was an interesting one. In some societies, the use of alcohol is associated with considerable violence, and in others, no relationship whatsoever exists between the two. Now, here in America, we kind of take that for granted that, some people, man, when they're drinking, they get violent. But see, it's not necessary. Yes, some people do, but it's not as consistent as it is at other. It's more consistently associated, violence and alcohol, in our culture than in many others. And I think it's because we have a violent culture, and alcohol is just yet another catalyst that precipitates the violence. Abusers, rapists often come from families where they witness violence and were abused themselves. Most victims of abuse, overwhelmingly so, are women. Research also indicates the more the power of a man, or I should say one partner, in relationship to the other partner in a relationship, the greater the likelihood of physical abuse. In other words, what power does the person hold in the relationship? So what are the two main sources of power in a marital relationship? To give you a hint, think about it this way. what are the two things couples fight over the most in a divorce? Money / property and the kids, right? So if one partner or the other disproportionately controls the finances and the decisions on the finances and the kids or the kids, the power is not shared, and there could be a problem in the relationship. Okay, hey, that's it for chapter 19. See you kids soon for chapter 20. Above all, stay safe. Bye for now.